Now listen! Out in the countryside, close to the main road, stood a farmhouse. Perhaps you have passed by and seen it yourself. There was a little flower garden with a painted wooden fence in front of it. Just nearby was a ditch, and on its fresh green bank grew a little daisy. The sun shone just as warmly and brightly on the daisy as it did on the magnificent flowers inside the garden, so the little flower grew very well. One morning, it had fully opened, and its little snow-white petals stood around its yellow center like the rays of the sun. The daisy didn't mind that no one noticed it in the grass or that it was just a poor, overlooked flower. On the contrary, it was quite happy. It turned toward the sun, looking up and listening to the song of the lark high up in the sky. The little daisy was as happy as if the day were a grand holiday, even though it was only a Monday. All the children were at school, and while they sat at their desks learning their lessons, the daisy sat on its thin green stalk and learned from the sun and its surroundings just how kind God is. It rejoiced that the song of the little lark expressed its own feelings so sweetly and clearly. With a sense of awe, the daisy looked up at the bird that could fly and sing, but it did not feel envious. "I can see and I can hear," it thought. "The sun shines on me and the forest kisses me. How rich I am." Inside the garden nearby grew many large and magnificent flowers, and, strange to say, the less fragrance they had, the more arrogant and proud they were. The peonies puffed themselves up to try to look bigger than the roses, but size isn't everything. The tulips had the finest colors, and they knew it well too. They stood straight as candles so that everyone could see them better. In their pride, they didn't even notice the little daisy outside. But the daisy looked over at them and thought, "How rich and beautiful they are. I'm sure the pretty bird will fly down and visit them. Thank God that I stand so near and can at least see all their splendor." And while the daisy was thinking this, the lark came flying down, crying, "Tweet." But the bird didn't go to the peonies and tulips, no. It flew down into the grass to the poor daisy. The daisy's joy was so great that it didn't know what to think. The little bird hopped around it and sang, "How beautifully soft the grass is, and what a lovely little flower grows here with its golden heart and silver dress." The yellow center of the daisy did indeed look like gold, while the little petals shone as brightly as silver. How happy the daisy was! No one could have any idea. The bird kissed it with its beak, sang to it, and then rose again up into the blue sky. It was certainly more than 15 minutes before the daisy could calm down. Half ashamed, yet happy at heart, it looked over at the other flowers in the garden. Surely they had witnessed its pleasure and the honor that had been paid to it. They must understand its joy. But the tulips stood stiffer than ever, and their faces were pointed and red because they were annoyed. The peonies were sulky. It was a good thing they couldn't speak, or they would have given the daisy a stern lecture. The little flower could clearly see that they were irritated, and it felt genuinely sorry for them. Shortly after this, a girl came into the garden carrying a large, sharp knife. She went to the tulips and began cutting them off, one after another. "Oh," sighed the daisy, "that is terrible. Now they're finished." The girl carried the tulips away. The daisy was glad that it was outside the fence and was just a small flower. It felt very grateful. At sunset, it folded its petals, fell asleep, and dreamed all night of the sun and the little bird. The following morning, when the flower once again stretched out its tender petals like little arms toward the air and light, the daisy recognized the bird's voice. But what it sang sounded so sad. Indeed, the poor bird had good reason to be sad, for it had been caught and put into a cage close by the open window. It sang of the happy days when it could fly about merrily, of the fresh green wheat in the fields, and of the time when it could soar almost up to the clouds. The poor lark was miserable as a prisoner in a cage. The little daisy wanted so much to help it, but what could be done? It was very difficult for such a small flower to figure that out. It completely forgot how beautiful everything around it was, how warmly the sun was shining, and how splendidly white its own petals were. It could only think of the poor captive bird for whom it could do nothing. Then 2 little boys came out of the garden. One of them had a large, sharp knife, like the one the girl had used to cut the tulips. They came straight toward the little daisy, which could not understand what they wanted. "Here is a fine piece of turf for the lark," said one of the boys, and he began to cut out a square patch of grass around the daisy so that the flower remained in the center of the square. "Pick the flower off," said the other boy. The daisy trembled with fear, for to be picked meant death, and it wanted so much to live, especially now that it was going with the square of turf into the poor captive lark's cage. "No, let it stay," said the first boy. "It looks so pretty." And so it stayed and was brought into the lark's cage. The poor bird was mourning its lost freedom and beating its wings against the wires. The little daisy could not speak or utter a comforting word, much as it would have liked to. So the morning passed. "I have no water," said the captive lark. "They have all gone out and forgotten to give me anything to drink. My throat is dry and burning. I feel as if I have fire and ice inside me, and the air is so heavy. Alas, I must die and leave the warm sunshine, the fresh green meadows, and all the beauty that God has created." And it thrust its beak into the piece of cool grass to refresh itself a little. Then it noticed the little daisy, nodded to it, kissed it with its beak, and said, "You must also fade in here, poor little flower. You and this little patch of grass are all they have given me in exchange for the whole world that I enjoyed outside. Each little blade of grass shall be a green tree to me, and each of your white petals a fragrant flower. Alas, you only remind me of what I have lost." "I wish I could comfort the poor lark," thought the daisy. It could not move a single leaf, but the fragrance of its delicate petals drifted out and was much stronger than such flowers usually have. The bird noticed this, and although it was dying of thirst and in its pain tore up the green blades of grass, it did not touch the flower. Evening came, and nobody appeared to bring the poor bird a drop of water. It opened its beautiful wings and fluttered about in its agony. A faint and mournful tweet, tweet was all it could utter. Then it bent its little head toward the flower, and its heart broke from thirst and longing. The flower could not fold up its petals and sleep as it had the previous evening. Instead, it drooped down in sorrow. The boys only came the next morning. When they saw the dead bird, they began to cry bitterly. They dug a nice grave for it and decorated it with flowers. The bird's body was placed in a pretty red box. They wanted to bury it with royal honors. While it was alive and sang, they forgot it and let it suffer in its cage. Now they cried over it and covered it with flowers. The piece of turf, with the little daisy still in it, was thrown out onto the dusty road. Nobody thought of the flower that had felt so much for the bird and had wanted so desperately to comfort it.